So, no, I wouldn't say I have a passion for HR.
Welcome back to Human Resources for the People. It's a human capital revolution. Today we're going to be talking about hiring someone in France. This is something that I like to do quite a bit is do comparative human resources. I like to look around the world and sort of describe as best as I can parts of their labor law and then compare it to the United States and when applicable certain states and other municipalities and so forth. This article is from Morgan Lewis Bacchius. They are employment law firms. Go check them out. Link down below if you want to read this. And the first one up is interesting from an American perspective because it talks about background checks. You know, there are background check limits. You know, you can ask an applicant to provide information directly to a third party, but when you can't really get background checks unless it's relevant to the job. So in this example, they throw out, you know, if they have a driver's license, you can ask for background information, but otherwise you may not. And of course, across the United States, there is growing limits on background checks in employment, but it is still very much legal depending on where you are in the United States and everything else. And these can be background checks across the board as long as they don't have a disparate impact on discrimination. And that's ultimately where most American labor law, most American employment labor law, sorry, that's redundant, but most law is focused in America is around discrimination. Most things are legal unless you discriminate, and then it's done for. It's but generally speaking, you know, most things are legal in the United States. However, you can't discriminate, and it's not allowed. And that's good, although, you know, I think that there should be more protections, perhaps. So, you know, for medical exams, it can only be a condition of employment when they're working in a particularly dangerous environment, and that's to make sure that they won't have particular conditions that will make those conditions worse. What I do think that's interesting and what is not legal in the United States is a medical exam is also mandatory for employees returning from maternity leave, leave for occupational disease, and leave of more than 30 days for a work-related or non-professional illness or accident. And that's really interesting. I mean, that would be considered, I think, incredibly discriminatory in the United States to require someone on maternity leave to have a physical exam. In addition, I think that it is, you know, interesting for ones that have been gone for more than 30 days. I don't, that's not common in the United States, and I don't believe that if you did it across the board, I suppose it would be legal. But it's so odd to me when, you know, medical exams can't be a condition of employment, but you have to do them when people leave for an extended period of time. Uh, in addition, the what's I think interesting to me is that industrial doctors have to see each employee at least every 5 years. And so, and disabled workers and night workers have to see it every three. And that's you know, we have no requirements with respect to monitoring or surveillance in the United States. Let me take that back. There are some requirements specifically around specific areas, but generally speaking, you know, it's not across the board, and it's not, you know, obviously you have hearing testing, for example, in industrial environments that are done, and you can do the monitoring on that, but we do not send them to the doctor or things of that nature. Next one up is drug and alcohol testing, and you can't ask any questions about an applicant's private life, which include questions about health. In the United States, you shouldn't ask about an applicant's employment or private life because it'll be a concern for discrimination. And again, that's where America's discrimination laws hold up so strong that oftentimes they do the same job that these laws do in France, for example, but for completely different purposes, right? And I think that's an interesting standard and an interesting concern. They can, a doctor can prescribe a drug or alcohol if it's relevant in assessing the applicant's ability to carry out the functions of the job, but the applicant must agree. This is pre-employment. Um, and so that's, you can, if you have to do a second test, the employer can do it themselves, though. There is no legal. There are no legal requirements to give preference in hiring, and making sure that or not to discriminate. And so what it means is that you can't give preference in hiring particular people because it's considered discrimination. They have enacted some disability laws that should help the disabled gain employment, and that is, that is really commendable. In addition, they can get financial contribution, and they can also apply their certified collective bargaining agreement, providing for a annual or multi-annual program in favor of disabled employees. And then they also added, other obligations to that. I think that's cool. It's very interesting. Beyond that, there has to be a written employment contract, um, especially if it's hired on a fixed term or part-time contract, and all of it has to include these things. Nothing particularly interesting to me. You have to have a job description that can be brief, notice of annual leave and notice period, etc. In addition, they define the probationary period. That's not defined in the United States, legally speaking, at least. In mandatory probationary periods is 2 months for workers and employees, 3 months for technicians and supervisors, and 4 months for executives. Interesting, and local probationary periods are authorized when they're provided for by collective bargaining agreements. Uh, I, I don't really like that. In in fact, in the United States, collective bargaining agreements cannot supersede law, and so it feels a little bit weird to me, personally speaking. But perhaps you could have a union with a much shorter probationary period. In addition, the probationary periods can be terminated after a notice period of up to 1 month, and that's pretty cool as well. If you like what you hear today, please like, share, and subscribe. We've heard what it's like to employ someone in France, and we'll probably be exploring what it's like to fire someone in France. So I'll see you on the next video. Bye, guys.